If you were looking at this face and listening to this voice, you were looking at a very disgusted and dejected Florida State fan. You know what? Fuck the intro. I don't. I don't really have the energy to do this shit. Um, y'all haven't seen me in a while, right? For good reason. I was done doing this show. I was moving on to doing other things. I didn't have the time to allocate to give you a consistent product and what I thought to be a good product. So I just moved on from it, and I kind of made that decision at the end of the season last year. Ride off into the sunset, 13-0, 13-1, depending on who you ask. The program is in good hands. Everything's going to be great with Florida State. I can finally focus on something I've been putting off for a very long time. Then I went to Dallas last week and saw Florida State play SMU. After the game, and I probably stayed maybe 5 minutes after halftime, I believe. I don't quite remember. But I have some pride for myself, so I didn't watch the whole thing. Um, I remember on my way home, I'm listening to everybody. Everybody who you can listen to, everybody who has an opinion about Florida State. And I don't know why everybody picked that particular. Well, I think it's because you lost the way you lost to SMU. Everybody picked that particular weekend to ask the question. The question was probably asked the entire week. How did Florida State get here? And I think that's a good question. I think it's a decent question. Um, Most people, I think the consensus is Florida State got here because of the college football snub. There was a snowball effect that the program has had to deal with, that the program is under due to the college football snub. I disagree. I don't think Florida State sits here at 1-5 after losing to Clemson at home due to the college football playoff. I do believe it plays a part. Like, I do believe that it has something to do with how Florida State got here. But I do not believe it is the reason we sit here talking about a program that just came off one of the best seasons in program history to look like this. In my opinion, the snub isn't how Florida State got here. How Florida State responded to the snub is how Florida State got here. Don't get me wrong, there are ramifications based off what happened, right? Mike Norvell, goddamn Mike. Mike Norvell has had to deal with some circumstances that are quite unique. And when things have never been done before, you have nothing to piggyback off of. You have nobody to get advice from. There's nothing you can look at and say, "Hey, listen, how do I continue to galvanize the troops, and how do I push on as a program?" Because that was unprecedented. What happened with that snub? It had never happened before. He had no counsel. It was just him all alone by himself about what to do with the program moving forward. Immediately following the snub, I had a few conversations with people, and I felt good about the conversations I had. I came on here after the snub, and it was my last show I had done, and I was very adamant about who Florida State was and how Florida State was going to move forward. I was very adamant about college football had picked a fight with the wrong fucking program. I was wrong. I was thoroughly wrong. I can't think of anything in recent memory that I've been as wrong about, especially on this channel. Um, we were lied to, and I don't mean in a sense of Florida State just simply leaving the conference. I'm not talking about that shit. I'm talking about how they were going to respond in a sense of not allowing this or not having this happen again, about finally getting Florida State back to some serious respectability. I was told that the amount of money, resources, and effort that were going to be put into Florida State to ensure this didn't happen again was going to shock a lot of people. I was misled, and the people who told me these things were misled. Truth be told, Mike was misled. The football team you see this season is not the football team that was promised to Mike Norvell. Um, This is a bad team. And if you say it's one of the worst teams, I'm sorry, if you say it's the worst team in college football, I can't argue because I don't spend a whole lot of time watching bad football, so I don't know who would be in the running for the worst teams, but I know I haven't seen them. This is bad because snub aside, this isn't a 1-5 roster. What they did give Mike Norvell to work with isn't 1-5. I don't think Mike Norvell is a bad coach, but he is doing a shit of a job coaching this team this season. He is fucking this up. And all of it doesn't fall at his feet, but you are the ruler over all that you survey. You are going to get the brunt of the criticism when things go badly just as much as you get extensions and you become multi-millionaire when you do well, when you go 13-1. 13-0 depending on who you ask. Even if this isn't the team he was told he was going to have, even if he hasn't gotten the resources that he was told he was going to get, there still isn't a 1-5 football team. Mike Norvell, again, is not a bad coach, but he is doing a shit of a job coaching this season. And, people, there are the conversations about how he looks on the sideline, how he looks dejected. I don't really know about all of that stuff. I'm not paying attention to his body language that much, but I do know that there was a guy that I saw that was as dialed in as you could be. That guy was a guy who started 0-4. I'm going to be honest with y'all. I want that motherfucker back. If we're talking, that sounds crazy, right? Why the hell do you want a guy that started 0-4? Because they finished 5-3. He didn't allow that team to quit. He kept pushing and pushing and pushing. That whole interview he had, whether it was planned or not, right? Where he was sitting there in the black FSU button up, and he gave that impassioned speech about fighting. I want that guy back. Because that guy knew what the fuck he was doing. He knew what he was up against. He did not let that team quit. Team, like I said, finished 5-3, 5-7 on the year, and they fought. That's all he claimed that he knew how to do was fight. I want that guy back. Because if we're talking about body language, philosophy, whatever the case may be, those are two different guys. I'm looking at what he has to deal with because you look at the fallout, right? You have recruiting to deal with. You have holes in your roster because you were going to get bludgeoned to death by the NFL draft, right? The mass exodus of talent that left Florida State, whether it be graduation or whether it be the NFL draft, you had a lot of holes to fill. We've talked about recruiting. We've talked about evals in the past. We've talked about you getting these kids ready for the big times who have had secondary, I guess you want to call it secondary positions in the sense of they don't get a lot of playing time. So now you're going to be thrust into the spotlight, thrust into starting roles. How are you going to respond? And I think we were confident in some of those pieces, right? Azareye'h Thomas, we saw what he's done since he's been at Florida State. He's going to be fine. You look at guys like, we didn't see Marvin Jones Jr. too much at Georgia, but highly touted recruit, a guy that Florida State wanted really bad for obvious reasons coming out of high school. You're going to be thrust into a starting role. Omar Graham, you're going to be asked to play more. Blake Nicholson, you're going to be asked to play more. Conrad Hussey, you're going to be asked to play more. How are you going to respond? Hakeem Williams, you're going to be asked to play more. Benson has not seen this level of snaps. You're going to be asked to do a whole lot of things that you didn't, A, have the opportunity to do at Alabama, and B, we don't even know if you had the skill set to do it at Alabama, right? There are some things, I believe, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But when you look at what he has, he's done a piss poor job of, this team has done everything they can to be 1-5. Everything. Nobody helps anybody. The goddamn game at at Florida State against Clemson is a prime fucking example of nobody helping nobody. Imagine the score if you didn't have as many drop passes as you had. Imagine the score. How the fuck do you forget how to catch the football? Can anybody explain that to me? Florida State, I'm all over the place, and I'm not going to apologize for it because I got a lot of goddamn shit to say. I remember back when Willie Taggart was in Florida. You know what? I said this to somebody. This is me being all over the place again. Deal with it. I remember talking to some people, and I remember saying, you know what? This is the curse of Willie Taggart. That's what Florida State is dealing with right now. All the inexplicable shit that has happened in Florida State since he's left, you couldn't make this shit up. You couldn't draw up. No program has had to deal with the laundry list of shit that Florida State has had to experience since he left. Think about it. You had the worst flip in college football history. You lost to Jacksonville State University. You started 0-4. The father of the program passed away. You're 1-5. You created history with the college football snub, the Amarius Mims saga. This program has been embarrassed over and over and over again. I'm talking about catastrophic embarrassing shit, right? The number of, and every program deals with flips. God damn, Florida State gets kicked in the nuts when it comes to flips. Recruits lead this motherfucker in embarrassing fashion. I don't know. I don't give a shit what you think about Willie Taggart. I really don't care. But I do know for fucking certain he was dealt a raw hand. The amount of resources that Mike Norvell had in the first 2 years, Willie Taggart didn't sniff his, 21 games or some shit? This bullshit about, 6 and 6 ain't the standard? What the hell is the standard? Can anybody tell me what the standard is at Florida State now? Because from what I've seen, year 5, the amount of regression this program has had is mind-boggling. What does this football team do well besides fucking lose? This team does nothing well. Nothing. Year 5. You just came off a 13-0 season. You were the ACC champions. In the very next season, you put out a product in which you do nothing well. I can't say special teams because I do believe punter and kicker, you have two of the best, probably the best punter and kicker tandem in the country. But your kickoff skills suck. Your kickoff coverage suck. Your punting coverage sucks. I'm watching the game last night. Florida State gets a blocked field goal. I think the score is 17-3. 17-7. This is a very important drive if you want to win the game. Because Mike Norvell has not fucking coached to win football games this season. So if you want to win the game, this is a very important drive. Because you have the opportunity to go down and make it a one-score game. Field goal or touchdown. It's 3rd and 2. Mike dials up a play that hasn't worked all fucking season long. You forced it down our throats. You forced it down the players' throats, pause if needed. You forced it upon us. The play doesn't fucking work. Most important possession of the game, the most important play call of the game until that point, probably the most important play call of the game, period, considering trajectory of winning or likelihood of winning, right? You called a wide receiver screen. I didn't know if I was more upset at the personnel he used or actually calling the play. I think that play has actually worked maybe once, and I think it was Jaylen Brown at SMU. I think. I could be wrong. Florida State receivers do not want to block. When you went 0-4, it wasn't until after the Syracuse game until you just removed that play from the fucking playbook. You know what? These kids don't want to block. Half of them can't catch. Let's just not do that anymore. Here you are, 6th game of the season, and you are still doing shit that doesn't work. And Brock Glenn, bless his heart, I can't imagine being a quarterback. Because I think you understand what I just said. I think the fans, the coaches, the players all understood that what was on the line on that 3rd and 2 call. It's 3rd and 2. I'm not even talking about the play prior to. I'm just talking about 30. You just need 2 fucking yards. 2. I can't imagine being Brock Glenn and receiving that play, because if I know the motherfucking play don't work, the person who practices every goddamn day knows that play doesn't work. Imagine being Brock Glenn. What? You want to run that play? No, send another play in, because I'm not running that shit. I actually want to fucking win. Imagine barely being able to hear. You put your hand over your ear holes and you hear Mike Norvell shoot that shit into your ear. I'm not running that. Send me another play. You know what? Fine. I'll find my own shit to run. I'm not running that. Nobody wants to play complimentary football. And I don't get it. This team is trying too hard to be 1-5. And whether Mike wants it, whether the Mike supporters want it, this falls at his feet. Stop calling for his head. That shit ain't gonna happen. I do think everything outside of him does need to be evaluated. I personally believe he needs to be evaluated, because in year 5, you look this goddamn bad and you only have 2 successful seasons to show for it. He definitely needs to be fucking evaluated. But we all know he's not gonna be fired. At this point, everybody can go. Everything, everywhere has fucking regressed. Everything. That is the most unathletic offensive line I can remember Florida State having in the past 3 to 5 seasons. Some of the guys, their predecessors sucked ass, right? But a lot of it was some of it was coaching. A lot of it was just, it's almost like they forgot to play their positions, right? Coming off 13-0, you don't expect that offensive line to be that bad. Everybody was shooting this shit around talking about built by storms. Does he not work with the offensive linemen? I'm asking seriously. Those guys don't look like they have a plan at all. What the fuck were they doing in the offseason? They look bad. We just had a running back selected in the second round of the NFL draft. First running back selected in the draft. Listen, that offensive line was good last season. We returned 3 starters from that team, maybe 4. 3 starters and plus a guy who was used pretty frequently. So 3.5 starters. How did they regress? How did they look so bad? And it's almost like this shit happens at the oddest of times. Mo Smith playing as badly as he did Saturday night is something nobody would. You couldn't have given me the money to bet he played as poorly as he did. You know, let me say this. I don't know what you guys expected to start the season. And it's easy for me to say this shit now because we're 1-5, but I can tell you, like last season, before the season started, Florida State going undefeated. You couldn't have told me any different. I was positive of it, and they did. This season, when I was asked, I don't know what the hell to tell you. And it's not because I thought the team would do bad. It's because I didn't fucking know. It had too many goddamn question marks. There were question marks littered all over this goddamn team. So for the people who had their predictions of going to the ACC championship, winning 12, 11, 10 games, I was wondering, how did you come up with that number? Because we don't know shit about this team. There are too many new pieces, too many new unproven pieces, unbattle-tested pieces. How the hell did y'all come up with these season total numbers? How the hell did y'all come up with these win numbers? So you listen to what you can. You listen to the people who report on the program. You listen to the people who write about the program. Nobody was on the same page for the most part, but what they did do is they all alluded. People, trust your eyes and your ears, all right? If I'm telling you that Florida State can't consistently catch the football, and catching the football is an essential part of of this sport, how are you expecting to win 12 games? If catching the football is an essential part of this sport, how the hell are you expecting to win 10 games? And this was what was being reported to us every fucking day. Florida State doesn't have a number 1 receiver. Florida State has an issue with drops in practice. Nobody's being consistent. Where did all this enthusiasm come from? You remember back when Willie Taggart was here? And, what's that kid's name? He was the number 1 ranked center in the country when he came in, but had never played center. I can't remember his name. He stayed Bavion Johnson. God bless Bavion Johnson. Florida State would have issues simply snapping the fucking football. And there would be so much optimism around the program at the start of every fucking season. And every season it was the same shit. Florida State has still having trouble snapping the football. And I used to wonder, where the fuck is this optimism coming from? If we can't do the basic shit, how the hell do you expect to succeed at this sport? If you can't snap the football, if you can't catch the football, if you can't tackle, how many games do you think you're going to fucking win? Like, how the hell did we get here? That is a grand old question. Well, how the hell did we get here to where you forget how to play football? Mike Norvell has made decisions that are adverse to winning. Going for 2 points when you probably shouldn't go for 2 points. Not going for 2 points when you have a offensively challenged team. Points are pretty hard to come by. So when there's an opportunity to get points and you have one of the best kickers in college football on the sideline, you should probably take the points. Mike Norvell says, fuck that shit. We going for it. I know you motherfuckers can't block. I know y'all can't catch. I know you not really that mobile of a quarterback. I'm going to go for it. Then you don't get it. Now you're looking around scratching your ass. You know, this is everybody not helping anybody. This is poorly coached football. I remember being in Dallas at the SMU game and watching them go for the same play 2 times in a row. Guys, if you had a fork and stuck it in me, it would have came out clean. I was done. I could not believe they ran the same play twice. First time it didn't work. Second time it didn't work because I forgot who whiffed horrifically on the block. But it didn't work. DJU does not move like he did at Oregon State. That was evident after the first game or two. Why the fuck are you still trying to move with him? I don't mean like him at the quarterback position. I'm saying running with him. Stop running with him. You're fooling nobody. SMU did not respect that shit whatsoever. Stand with him. Stand with Kyle Morlock. Kyle Morlock cost you that game at SMU. He did. He didn't cost you the game before that, whichever game that was, but he cost you that game at SMU. You should have been moved away from him. I've seen head coaches of premier programs bench linemen for false starts. Morlock does nothing well. Not a goddamn thing. And you heard before the season how they really wanted to implement him in the offense. And I thought to myself, outside of the red zone, I don't see how he's an asset to anything. And the only reason why I'm saying he was an asset in the red zone or could be is because he's tall as shit. You utilize that to your advantage. They don't. They didn't. Nobody's helping nobody. The reason why I say Mike Norvell should be up for evaluation at the end of the season is simply because he came here as an offensive guy. The offensive guy has an offense that fucking sucks. It's probably the worst in college football. Probably time to stop calling him an offensive guy, don't you think? He can't be an offensive guy. He can't be an offensive guy if his offense sucks ass. And if we're being honest, when you're 13-0, you don't want to dive too much into the negativity bag. That offense last season left a lot to be desired. A lot. Florida State should have pummeled teams last year offensively. They didn't. They were good, but they should have been great. They weren't. And I was worried about that headed into this season. A lot of the guys who you all said were going to do well, I didn't understand that shit. I had seen nothing from Pat Payton that led me think that he was going to be ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He has the tools, but what he was asked to do last season, a lot of it wasn't always just pin your rears back and rush the quarterback, right? He didn't show a lot of moves. He didn't show a lot of counter moves. A lot of what you saw him do was what he was asked to do last season. So how the fuck do I know he's gonna be able to replace Jared Verse? Right? Um, I don't know what the fuck happened to Junior. Jackson sucks ass. No, because we were just all told he was such a freak in practice, and now he's just Jackson Jr. I don't know what the hell happened to him. It was supposed to be such a vaunted defensive line. It's not. They're continuing to play. Look how many games it took them to reduce the snaps of Marvin Jones Jr. It, I remember being the head. I was driving the bandwagon for benching Fitzgerald when he had the yips, right? And come to find out, it was all because Pap decided to change his kicking motion. Who the fuck changes the kicking motion in college of all goddamn places? But anyway, I was saying he doesn't need to be back on the bus. Mike stuck with him. Look what happened. And I think his fierce loyalty to certain players, maybe, or I think we are in a microwave society. Um, we expect results right now. We don't allow time for players to develop anymore. We don't. And we don't live in a society where it's conducive to do that, if we're being honest. I think his willingness to stick it out with guys is going to end up being his downfall. Because look at what sticking with the guys is doing. You had a really good recruiting class coming into this season. A really good recruiting class, and look what the fuck has happened. You can attest some of that to what you see on the field. You can also attest to that being the development of it. But look at the guys who you're sticking with. If I'm a wide receiver, I'm not coming to Florida State. I see what y'all do throwing the ball. I'll pass. Because you probably should have went to Brock Glenn earlier just to inject some life into this. And I'm not even the biggest Brock Glenn fan, right? But I know that there are more things you can do offensively with Brock Glenn. He has more athleticism. I think he'd be quick to the trigger more than DJ would, as you saw last night or Saturday night with against Clemson. You did none of this shit prior to look how long it took you to get here. I can't believe you pushed all your chips into the table. Well, you didn't push all your chips, but the things you invested in that you wanted to do so well this season, you are so bad at. You invested a lot into being a really good running team, and you were terrible at it. You invested a lot to finally bring some speed to Florida State, and you can't use it because you can't block, and you have a quarterback who doesn't really know how to throw accurately, or he really can't throw accurately. I didn't want DJU when he came. I was sad when they targeted him. There are some names that there are some names that wanted to come to Florida State that if a lot of you guys knew, you'd be pissed. Now, I'm not talking about guys in which Florida State targeted and whiffed on. I mean, there were guys that Florida State, that were players that you know the names of that wanted to come to Tallahassee, and Florida State passed on them. I think the arrogance that 13-0 can breed kind of swept in. It kind of crept into the program. I'll say this. This can be fixed. If you're a fan of this channel, if you've been rocking with me for as long as I've been doing this, I tell you, I believe a football team is built from the inside out. I believe if you're building a program, having a conversation about building a program in week 5, man. Building a program, you do it from the inside out. You build in the trenches. So Florida State is cheap. There is money being poured into the program, and I'm maybe top 15, top 20 money. But Florida State proved that they were a top 5 program last year. So you do what? You put top 5 money into the program. They didn't. They went the cheaper route. You get what you pay for. Hence 1 in 5, right? Even though this isn't a 1 in 5 roster. But if you want to oversell somewhere, if you want to cash out somewhere, if you want to reset the market somewhere, in my opinion, it's in the trenches. You can go get a Corvette of a wide receiver. What good is that going to do you if you can't get him the fucking football? If you can't block them, you can't beat them. If they can't block you, they can't beat you. You start in the trenches. You want to give too much money to some goddamn body, do it to an elite tackle, an elite guard, an elite center. Do it to an elite defensive end. Do it to an elite D tackle. You overpay those guys because they don't come around very often. If there's a blue chip guy out there, you go get him and you give him what he asks for. If you want to reset the market somewhere, fuck it, even if you don't, you do it here. This is how you fix Florida State. You have to pay to win at every level. You can't escape it. I remember once I did a show and I reported on the dollar amount that LSU, Clemson, Georgia, and Alabama used for off-field purposes, right? For their staff, for their facilities, all this shit. I reported on how much money they pour into your GAs, your strength and conditioning program, stuff like that, and their number, it's so much separated them from the rest of college football. And at the time, those four programs were the cream of the whatever that shit goes. They were the creme de la creme of college football, if you will. And I'm looking at Florida State, and this is what I mean when I say the snub didn't get you here. How you responded to the snub did. Had you just pushed all your chips into the table just as you did prior to the 23 season, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't. Stop being cheap. Pull your head out of your asses. Redo this goddamn staff. I love Dugans. He has to go. If your wide receivers can't catch footballs, you can't stay here. Whether it's your poor coaching, whether it's your poor evals, you can't stay here. I love Atkins to death. These guys suck. These guys have been in Florida State for a very long time, and they suck. Either you can't coach or your evals are bad. Because the guys behind them are not ready. Why the fuck didn't Jalen Early start last night? What's this fixation, or what's this loyalty to Jeremiah Byers? Why the fuck didn't Jalen Early start last night when he's proven he's a better right tackle than Byers? Because now when I talk about paying, you know how much money you're going to have to invest in this fucking team to keep the guys here at the end of the season? Oh, the transport portal ain't going to be kind to Florida State when this shit ends this season. You need to go out there and spend, because your recruiting class going to be trash, right? Not trash, but it's not going to be as good as it was, right? So you're going to have to find guys to build your roster again. Year 5, god damn. You're going to have to find guys to build your roster with in the transfer portal, right? So that's going to cost you a pretty penny. On top of that, you're going to have to convince guys to stay. They're going to want more money because the people around them, maybe the kids themselves, are going to be smart enough to know, I got you. I got leverage. Because if I'm Charles Lester, why would I stay? I'm not even touching the fucking field, and you guys suck. There are other programs who are probably going to pay me a tad bit more money. I'm going to play more, and they're probably in a better position. Why would I stay? Right? If I'm not going to keep naming players. I don't want to keep doing that shit. But there are a lot of players who have a lot of leverage who also have talent, right? Whether it be money, whether it be playing time, a program calling them that is in a better position that doesn't have to rebuild in year fucking 5, right? You had to ante up. So the resources you were more likely to allocate towards the transfer portal and recruiting, you can't. You have to keep the players you have here. Because there is still this is the crazy part about this shit. There still is a good bit of talent on this roster. And in order to fix this, because in the meantime, you have to go out and get dollars on the recruiting trail, right? You're going to have to keep these guys happy. Which would have helped had you start playing some of these kids. As well, the hashtag free my youngest, like, because they knew after the third or fourth game, this shit was done. Play the other guys. because the guys who you cashed in on, the overpaid guys, the tenured guys, they fucking suck. And if they don't suck. They're not playing hard. They're not being consistent, right? All right, fine. Go do that shit on the bench. Give these other guys the opportunity to play. That would, at the very least, quell some of those issues you would have at the end of the season. I would have been started coaching towards next season. Would have been done it. If we're gonna go 1-5, I'm gonna go 1-5 with the guys who can catch the goddamn football. I'm gonna go 1-5. I'm hoping who can catch the damn football. I'm gonna go 1-5 with development. I'm gonna live with these lumps and these bumps along the goddamn way. It's all part of playing young people. But at the very least, they would have had incentive to come back because at least I know I got a shot next season. You can sell that to recruits. I don't know how much of a good selling tool that is, but it's still something to sell. You can't do that. Not at 1-5. You guys realize SMU beat Florida State and nothing happened. Like they didn't. That wasn't. I was there, and it's like they knew they were going to win. That was embarrassing. SMU knew they were going to beat Florida State. This is where we at. This is where we at. I don't want to hear nobody else tell me Mike got us. Mike ain't got his goddamn self. You guys should have, if you wasn't there, man, I'm going to just tell you, there was very little excitement. And I don't expect it to be like Vanderbilt responding to beating Alabama. I'm just saying, the stadium wasn't even sold out. Like, it was Florida State. Who gives a shit? I'm dead ass serious. There's a way to fix this. And I think people know the way to fix this. Fix it. That's all the time I'm giving you. That's all the time I got. I cannot promise I'll be back next week. I probably should be back next week, considering it is a bye week and I have more shit to say. But if you like this kind of content, I appreciate it if you like this video, if you share this video, if you're new to his channel, subscribe. I may be back, like I said, I don't know. But like I tell y'all all the time, man, I appreciate y'all. I appreciate everybody checking in with me, asking me where I've been, just making sure I'm all right. I'm fine. As you can see, I'm doing well. But I appreciate everybody, and I appreciate your time more than anything. So if you watch this video throughout its entirety, if you didn't, I appreciate you. You can get at me at what is my tag on Twitter? I don't even know. I think it's the Hot Seat 19 on Twitter. I think the same thing. That's the same handle on Instagram, man. You can reach me there. But until next time, whenever next time is, y'all be good.